I think that we mostly commented on challenges. It's obviously appealing to us. We're here in this course because we consider this appealing. This is a good way of studying, very flexible, very based on the autonomy of the student. But it is also a challenge because first, the students in Mexico are not very autonomous because the previous educational system is just not like that. The teachers in Mexico tend to give homeworks like read from this page to this page and that's it. And if you do, you have a 10 or 100%. So it's like change. We have to change it on the system, on the way students learn here in Mexico, for once. And then the other challenge is for our university to recognize the importance of this modality, of this way of teaching, because it seems like the university leaves this activity or looks at it as an extra, but it's not taken as part of our responsibilities, and we still have to do all the cursos credenciales, ¿cómo se dice? Presential courses, and if we want to give an extra online, it's up to us, but we still, well, it's an extra, in few words. So it's very interesting to be here to listen to you who have been teaching this for almost 10 years in this modality, but there is still a long way for us to get where you are and to have our university consider these courses as a good option and not a like second-class option of education. For education of our students. Well, basically it's a seat, right? Okay.
Thank you. Yes, I understand completely, and again, I do these kinds of things all the time with different universities in the States and in Europe and now Mexico. And I understand those challenges. I would not profess that this is the only way to teach, it's just one way. I do think that I really appreciate the university issue because here I have been doing this for so long, I still struggle with the university. So I still don't get everything that I want. We don't always list our courses, for example, to students that they're going to be a blended class. Well, that's a problem. Students should know that what kind of class they're getting into. We aren't allowed to use a wide range of tools. So everything I do with my students, it pretty much is in Blackboard. I just have learned that I can't let the university tell me how to do everything I do. In the States, we call this academic freedom. So for me, this is about how can I better prepare my students. I also appreciate what you say about what students expect from a learning experience, coming from elementary and high school and coming to university. They have their whole life had one type of learning experience. I can understand that because we have similar, slightly different but similar here in the States. We are very test driven in the States, and therefore students come, all they want to do is take a test. They don't really care about, that's all they're used to when they're freshmen. So I appreciate that challenge too. I will argue with you as we go through this, so you don't feel like it's a waste of your time, is that you think about some part of what we talk about in the next sessions that can help you do something a little different, because ultimately what you told me is you want, and I even wrote it down, You want to have students do more than theory. You want them to be able to apply what they're learning, and you want them to be able to use what they're learning. So I have a graphic for you to think about. I think that's all our goal. We tend to, I think, in the classroom, and I know I do, focus on this part of what happens. And this is what I think they get in their early education. They learn facts, they learn procedures, principles, they take tests, they have homework, right? That's what you described to me, right? I think that's what you described. What we really want to move towards, though, is what I'm hearing from you anyway, and this I know to be true for me, is what we want them to move to is this other side. We want to move to what students can do. We want them to use critical thinking. We want them to be able to solve problems. We want them to perform. We want them to show us what they can do. There are many ways to do this that aren't that difficult and that will help prepare them for their next courses and for their experiences in the workplace. Because it's the right side of the screen they will have to do their entire adult life. We all, in our daily life, deal with critical thinking, problem solving. We are measured every day based on our performance by our students and our supervisors. So my suggestion to you as we go through this class is for you to think about one course, just one course, that you can help slowly, at least a part of your course, move towards this different model so that students are acquiring these higher level skills. That's my challenge to you. When we did this in the summer, it was quite interesting because we were able to shift some of the activities. And as we go through this program, I'm going to share with you what the class in the summer did so you can see what your peers came up with as they were trying to take one course and change it. So what I'd like to do now, here we go, is thinking about a process we will use. Are you thinking about one course you might work with as we go through our activities? Because this won't be very helpful to you if you don't have a course that you would be interested in changing somewhat. We're just going to work on one part of one course. We're not going to do the whole course. We're just going to focus on one part. Does everyone have a course in mind they might redesign? Okay. All right. Well, I have this picture of a underground transportation map because I think we have to think about where we're going. There are so many routes, and that's what I want to impress upon you. There's no one right route. Okay. There's many routes. Just like you may teach differently the same subject, we're going to look at different routes we could take. And I'm going to use with you what we call a map. And the reason why we do a map is because, as illustrated in this graphic, we can build too much. We can think, I have so much time, I can make my students do so many more things. That may be true, but we want to kind of control ourselves. So you can see in this picture, this is an example of two racetracks. We want to kind of think about creating kind of, let's see if I can circle this. Yeah, this kind of racetrack. If I can change colors here. Yeah. We want to think about creating this more round racetrack. We want to avoid the racetrack that is confusing, we don't know where to go, because it's going to be too hard for the students and too confusing for you. So that's why we're going to use what I call a map, and I'll show you what that means in a minute, because we want everybody to stay on the course. We don't want to get lost, right? I have another discussion for you, and I'd like you to actually think about this for your own course. So you can jot this down. You don't have to share with me, but I want you to think about for the course you're considering, I want you to think about, how do you observe or document student learning? How do you know that students have learned? And I want you to think about, how can we determine this? For example, in my course, I have discussions. I have them come to class, so we talk in class. I also have them do little homework assignments. I have them take quizzes. Actually, I have them take my quizzes. They can take my quizzes multiple times, and I'll share my strategy about that in the next session. I also have my students lead discussions, so I'm not leading the discussion, they are. For example, I may divide a class up into groups. Every group has to lead a discussion about a different topic about which they're prepared. They prepare for leading it outside the classroom. They come to the classroom, then they discuss and lead discussions, as you see here in this picture. So I want you to think about your course for about 5 minutes, jot down some ideas about what you do now about how you assess your students. Where do you see or observe learning? And then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about the process we're going to use. So I'll be quiet for about 5 minutes and then we'll come back. If you have any questions, please come up and ask me at the computer. I do encourage you to think about what we use to help students know that they've learned and what we use to determine what they've learned. We'll see lots of examples about how people do this in different ways. Is there any question you have or comment you want to share with me before we go on?
No, yet.
So this is where people usually start when they try to redesign. They either use the syllabus, they start with course objectives, they start with what they're already doing, the course materials you have, the presentations, the assignments, the activities you already have in your courses. You may also want to look at other blended courses. And I have created for you, and I just wanted to show that to you real quickly. I actually, in your, let me see if I can find it real fast for you. You will, at some time in our time together, actually look at, and I'm going to see if this works. I'm never quite sure if things work the way I think they are going to work, but it's funny, I don't have a lot of confidence in technology sometimes, but so let me see if I can figure out how to do this. So I have created for you a web page. Let's see if it comes up. I'm not seeing it here, but here we go. So I have this web page. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it will be linked for you. Don't worry about writing this down. But in this web page, you will find examples of courses and course syllabus from all different courses. I think there is something for everyone in that room. So you can actually look at what other faculty member have done. And you can see it's pretty extensive. There are also templates for course syllabus at the very bottom of this page. So this should be something that you will hopefully be helpful to you as you begin to think about other ideas. Now, I know you're concerned about your students not being ready. We will talk about that. They may be more ready than we think they are. I find that my students always surprise me, because most of us, when we are starting to think about our course, we start with our syllabus. I have a handout for you in Blackboard about how to write a syllabus for a blended course. It's not that much different probably from what you do. My university, like yours, has some requirements about syllabus. It's not taking away anything, it's organizing things a little bit. So that's something else you can look at in the materials I provided to you. But pretty much what we're going to be doing is thinking about what we call a learning module. It's kind of like a weekly organization. Typically, modules are a short unit of study that include activities, and activities are what the student does, not what we do, what the student's doing. Are they discussing? Are they collecting information? Are they writing reports? Are they reading? Are they research? Are they observing? Are they asking questions? Assignments, this would be homework, and then assessments, a test or some kind of performance. It's these 3 A's that we will focus on as we go through our courses and think about how we can change our courses to help students learn better, which is your goal. You told me that was your goal, and apply what they're learning to their future profession. We're not actually, oops, I don't know how I got to that. Sorry, we're going to skip this activity. But we are going to talk about this, backwards design. And the notion behind this approach is that you start thinking about what do you want the student to be able to do when they leave your course. For example, I teach web design. I don't think, maybe somebody else in this class teaches web design. But when I teach web design, I have to start by thinking, what will someone expect them to know about web design? If they get a job in the next course they take, that's where I start. And then I think about, well, how will the student and their next professor know that they can do this? And then at the end, I think about how to teach it, okay? So let me give you an example of this, how this might work. So if we wanted students to design a restaurant kitchen, we would want them to be able to select materials according to building code, and we would want them to stay in a budget. Now that's what people outside of the classroom want them to do. So what would I look for in my class? Well, my evidence would be blueprint plans, a material list with a city code next to it, so they're not using anything that doesn't belong to the code, and a budget. Then I think, well, how would I design the course? Well, you can see at the very right side of the screen here, what's in red is what they do in class. They form teams, they review the assignment. Outside of class, they visit a restaurant, they interview architects, they draft their plan. Then they come back to class and they present their draft. Now they may be reading, they may be watching videos as well, but this is kind of the idea of how we're going to approach thinking about redesigning one part of one of your existing classes. It's pretty straightforward. Any questions about what I'm asking you to think about?